Hi, Tracy. Welcome to Birth in Focus. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you, Samantha?
I'm doing so great. I'm really looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better and to finally somewhat meet, even though it's still virtual, and to hear your story. And so I'd love it if you could just kind of start by telling me a little bit about you and your family and what you do.
Sure. So I'm originally from South Africa. My husband and I lived there and we got married there, and then we moved over to the UK, where we lived for a few years and we had our first son. When he was 3 months old, we uprooted again and moved to the US. We've been living here for the last 8 years and grew our family by another two little chickens. So I've got three little ones, and my husband and I, and our three fur babies. And yeah, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I look after the kiddos. I also a small business owner on the side. But yeah, my main job is being mom.
That is so neat. Okay, so were you like born and raised in South Africa?
Yeah,
Or,
so we're both born and raised South Africans.
okay.
And then we got an opportunity to move over to the UK with my husband's work, his employment, and we took it with both hands because it was an adventure. And we
Mm-hmm.
didn't have kids yet, so it was easy to move from one continent to another and kind of
Mm-hmm.
just, have no furniture for the first while and live comfortably, just the two of us. And then when our 3 years were up in the UK, they offered us a position over in the US.
Wow, that is so neat. I am so excited to kind of hear like so obviously, well, I mean, I guess not obviously, but you chose to breastfeed for all three of your children, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'd love to know just I guess like culturally and stuff what your like I guess initial thoughts were on breastfeeding maybe before you had your first where do you see any sort of similarities or differences between the US and the UK and South Africa when it comes to the decisions to breastfeed and like whether or not it's culturally accepted, like just all those things, like were there differences amongst those three places?
Absolutely. I think that just generally over in the UK and South Africa, breastfeeding is openly more accepted. Like if you're breastfeeding in public, it's not something that people are like about.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up, well, I was a breastfed baby. My mom breastfed my brother. So breastfeeding's always been something that I knew that I was going to do with my children, barring any problems. And then over in the UK, breastfeeding is very supported. So you have free breastfeeding classes for the public. You can just go down to the local hospital and join a free breastfeeding class where they will teach you everything you need to know. Breastfeeding 101. You have access because healthcare is free there. Well, free. You have access to a midwife that comes to your home after your baby's born to help you set up your breastfeeding journey. You have a healthcare worker that literally comes to your house from day three and then every 3 days for the first 4 weeks to come and see how you're doing. If you wanted to weigh the baby, if you're having latch problems, they were there. They weren't necessarily lactation specialists, but they had a basic understanding and a basic education in breastfeeding. So you weren't left to struggle or to seek help if you didn't actually know if something was wrong or not. So the support is massive over in the UK. That was my experience with my first baby, and also because breastfeeding is the norm over there. You can breastfeed in public, and nobody's kind of saying you need to cover up or anything like that. So I do feel that it's more accepted over in the UK. Obviously, I've breastfed my babies in South Africa when we went back. Again, nobody really looks at you or like makes any comments or anything like that. So possibly just more accepted.
Yeah, that is so interesting. So, did you participate in any of those free classes that you were talking about, like at the hospital on breastfeeding? Did you do some of those?
Yes, so I didn't do any of the prenatal stuff, but I did do the breastfeeding classes because obviously with all the research I had done, and I know that even though it's the most natural thing in the world, it doesn't come very easy. Sometimes it's quite a tricky situation because you're both learning, both yourself and your baby. And so I did attend the breastfeeding classes. They were very helpful. We all got to bring a stuffy with us, and we got to practice positioning and everything like that prior to baby being with us. So it gave
Yeah.
me a good foundation, like an understanding of kind of what to expect. And it provided me with empowering language. Like when I started breastfeeding, if I found like certain, like if baby was clicking or like I had understanding of what that could mean and who I'd need to look towards for help, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it really is an easier resource over there in terms of getting breastfeeding education.
Yeah, that is so neat. I particularly loved the part where you said that it gave you empowering language. Yeah, I mean, it just gives you like such a good foundation and a basic understanding, and um, I love that. That's so neat. Like it just kind of it gave you like the things to look out for and the ability to identify them right off the
Right. And
bat,
it and I
which was
think the
really
thing
cool.
is you don't know what you don't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you've never breastfed before, you don't know what is normal, what's not normal. So you turn to Google or you turn to YouTube, and not everything on there is always very accurate. So just going in with some basic knowledge of what to expect, and kind of like even just with regards to when people say your milk comes in, what that actually means, and just having an idea of just like you're not completely barren and then your milk comes in, because
Mm-hmm.
if you don't know what you don't know. So yes, those foundation classes were really, really helpful.
That is so neat. That's really cool. Um, So with that, like, with your first, did you experience any like hiccups or obstacles that you weren't anticipating when you first started
So
nursing?
I think my birthing story with regards to my first was very different to most first time moms. I had no overnight hospital stay, even though I birthed in a hospital. So I had him in the morning and I was home in the evening because everything was fine.
Mm-hmm.
But he had not latched at all in the hospital. So I was, left to figure it out when I got home. And the reason behind that, because part of the breastfeeding classes that we did, they spoke specifically about colostrum harvesting, which is something that isn't widely done here in the US, where prior to you having your baby, you can harvest your colostrum, which is your, really early milk, which is there for when your baby is born. And you can store it in 1 ml syringes in your freezer. And then when you go into labor, take it with you to the hospital. And the way my birth story went, it required my husband to feed my baby with the colostrum prior to me being able to hold him and be able to feed him. So he was fed in the hospital, but he had just never latched. And that
Mm-hmm.
colostrum honestly saved our breastfeeding journey, because the alternative is if I had gone with nothing, he would have been given a bottle of formula
Mm-hmm.
or whatever was available in the hospital at the time. So yes, so the colostrum harvesting, I speak about it to anybody who'll listen. It really is a wonderful tool that we don't talk about enough. And then we got home, and now I have this tiny human being, and my whole day was a whirlwind. Left in the morning, came back in the evening with a baby. Not prepared for that. Was really very prepared to be in the hospital for a couple of days. And yeah, we did. I think there wasn't so much of a struggle. He didn't have any ties or anything like that, so he latched really well. But again, if you've never done it before, the sensations, everything that happens, your hormones, what your body's going through, it catches you unprepared. Like even with it, like basic education I had received, once you go through it, it's a whole different experience. So thankfully, I had the support of the midwife that came to my house to check on us, and then the healthcare worker that came every other day for weeks. So any questions I did have were answered on the spot, and they were able to make sure that I was doing okay. I mean, nothing drastically bad happened, but it was just the cluster feeding and the concern of if he's having enough, all the basic newborn concerns.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like even moms who have, I guess you could say, like anticlimactic breastfeeding experiences, like there are still so many like things that go into it. There's so much. I don't necessarily want to say fear, but for some moms it is fear. Just a lot of questions, a lot of unknowns, uncertainties, doubts, sleep deprivation, like you're learning, your baby's learning. Are they eating? Are they not eating? How many times have I fed them? Are they eating too much? Are they not eating enough? How do I know if they're getting milk? Like even the most basic, simplest breastfeeding journeys still come with all of that. Um, So I don't feel like there's any breastfeeding journey that's just easy.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think along with that is without like the fear side of it is just not we take a lot of advice and information from our older generation, right? So they're
Hmm.
saying things like if your baby's not pooping literally after every feed, they're not getting, misinformation we're receiving from grandmothers, mothers, those type of things, because that's what was done back in their day.
Hmm.
So along with you already feeling anxious about certain things, you now have this idea of like, oh, well, Granny said that if this isn't happening, then we're not
Hmm.
doing the right thing.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's why that breastfeeding class was so beneficial, is because it gave factual education on like this is what to expect, this is the range of normal. So it did put a lot of that like anxiety at ease. But still, the physical side of breastfeeding is just something you cannot prepare for until you do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, just again, like the unknowns, not being able to see it. Like I know a lot of moms even express, when you're nursing, like when you feed with a bottle, like you know how many ounces you put in that bottle, and so you're able to track how much they're eating or not. And when you're nursing, can't really do that. And so there's just a lot of faith, I feel like, that goes into it, a lot of trust in your body and in your baby, and it can be challenging. I feel like even for the people who have like what seem to be the simplest experiences. So you had your first in the UK. I know you said you moved to the US when he was 3 months old. So I have a couple questions with that. Ultimately, one, just so I don't forget it, how long did you nurse your first, like total? But then two, I would love you if you could kind of touch on what a cross world global move is like with a 3 month old. Like, and I mean, that's a lot. Like, to be 3 months postpartum and nursing for the first time, moving across the world, and moving somewhere you've never been before. Like, there's a lot there. So I'd love to hear like a little bit about that experience.
So I nursed him for a total of 2 years and 3 months.
Good
Yeah,
job.
so we went
Go
over
you.
we went over the 2 year mark, and he was a tricky one to wean. He was very attached to his milkies. I got pregnant with my second, and I nursed him until I was 16 weeks pregnant, and I couldn't anymore. There was just nothing left in me. Growing a baby and nursing, I couldn't go any longer.
Yeah.
So 2 years and 3 months with him. Yes, moving with a baby. It's not something I would recommend. I mean, in the UK, he was doing okay. He's always been not the greatest sleeper, but I felt like we had gotten into a good rhythm. And even because we left the UK and we went to South Africa to spend Christmas with our families, with the first grandchild and everything like that. So it was a very special time. And they're kind of like on the same time zone. There's just an hour's difference. So there wasn't a huge interruption in the sleep. We had one 10-hour flight and it was great.
Mm.
So for a month, he was doing great. Granny and Grandpa's, all helped. He was sleeping, napping. I felt strong. Everything was fine. Fast forward to our trip to the US. We had two long haul flights so from South Africa back to the UK, and then from the UK over to Dallas, to DFW. And I got food poisoning on the first flight.
Mm.
So my second flight was awful, awful,
Yeah.
awful. And we had just kind of entered that 3 months, 3.5 month kind of like mark with him. So you were leading up to like the 4 month sleep regression. And honestly, from the time we landed here, my husband and I always joke, we broke him because he
No.
just he just refused to sleep. I think the 8 hour time zone shift, with 8 hours difference where we left in the evening and we landed, it was just a mess. And then we were staying in like a hotel whilst we waited for our house and everything like that. So the whole routine was just gone. There was no extra hands. My husband worked the day after we landed, so he was in the office. It was me and him for the first time in a month and a bit alone in a hotel room, which is not my home. Um, so yes, it was incredibly challenging. From the food poisoning, I ended up getting mastitis. So my first 2 weeks here in the US, I was very ill. and
Mm-hmm.
not knowing the words for medications because everything has a different name here. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
having never been here, I couldn't walk into a CVS or a Walgreens or anywhere and go like, this is what I need, because I just didn't have the language for like the medication that I needed. And when I tried to explain what I was going through to the pharmacist, they always looked at me a bit like a little strange. Obviously not well versed in mastitis care. Didn't
Mm-hmm.
have a doctor, didn't know about urgent care. That's something else that was completely new for us. It's not something we don't necessarily, we have like, even in South Africa, you have your doctor and then you have the ER. There's no
Mm-hmm.
real in between like an urgent care. So we weren't aware of that. So yeah, for the first 2 weeks, I was pretty ill. And really struggled with having the baby, going through the sleep regression, being terrified of like, because we were then bed sharing, and now being a seasoned mom, I obviously am more educated in the safer ways of bed sharing and things like that. But when you're just kind of thrown into it after he's been sleeping in a crib for so long, it just, it was a lot. It absolutely was a lot. And it's a bit of an, like I said, a unique situation because we had to stay in a hotel, and it was just, we had gone from having both sets of grandparents, two uncles, two aunties, everybody looking after one baby. It was heaven. To
Mm-hmm.
being left alone for up to 12 hours a day with the baby. It was hard, so it really took a toll on all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm stuck on the fact that you got mastitis and you were sick, and I'm just assuming that even though you had all that, because you talked, I just the parallels are just paralleling for me. So, because you talked about being in the UK and how you just had ample support. I mean, free breastfeeding classes, health care providers who were coming to see you every other day for weeks. Like you just, in a sense, had like more help than probably you knew what to do with. And then you moved to the US, and I'm just gonna venture out here and say that you said you didn't have a doctor, so I'm sure you didn't have a lactation consultant, and nor like have any clue where to find one, and like the medication thing, and I mean, I don't know. I've never had mastitis either, but I'm pretty sure, just being an American, I know that you can't walk into a CVS and like tell them what you have and they'll give you medicine for it. Like I think you have to have prescriptions for that sort of thing. Like I don't think they make over the counter medication for mastitis. Like I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they have like natural remedies and stuff that you could probably get some supplies for at CVS, but I don't know. I mean, even as an American, I've never tried to just walk into a CVS and ask for like a medication for something. Um, yeah, like that's just like, so yeah, like how you went from having so much support, so much education, so much help, to then a few months later just basically being in the complete opposite place, and I mean being somewhere new and alone and sick and not having any help or direction. Like I just can't imagine that this is just such a 180.
It was, and we knew it was going to be hard. We definitely knew it was going to be a difficult move, especially because of the time zones and stuff. And then it's also difficult to speak to your family because you've got a very short window every day where everybody's awake at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So that was tricky, just even for emotional support, to try and get a hold of people and speak to people. And then you land here, you don't have cell phones, you don't have cell phone contracts, everything's, we had to set up from scratch because very few things in the world is transferable to the US like it is in the other
Mm-hmm.
parts of the world. So it was a very, very
The
tricky
US makes
situation.
everything difficult. They like to be complicated.
So it was a very tricky situation. And I think, I tell you now that I had mastitis. I think back then I didn't know exactly what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And in South Africa, you could kind of go to your local pharmacy and be like, this is what I'm experiencing, and they would be able to recommend some stuff. CVS
Mm-hmm.
lady just looked at me. She's like, take some ibuprofen. I was like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like I could feel like here a pharmacist's job is literally just to like fill bottles that the doctors tell them to fill and slap a label on it. Like they don't
I know that
know
now.
any of that. Like they hit like, and so yeah, like they're basic like I don't know. They have all this
I had,
understanding of medication, but like not applicable and like education about medicine. Like they can't
right.
actually do anything with it. So
And I I think it was also it was laughable because she's like, take ibuprofen, but you probably couldn't take it if you were breastfeeding. I'm like, okay, but that's why I'm here, because I'm not well, and I'm pretty sure it's got something to do with like, I had the food poisoning, struggled to breastfeed. I was just so sick. And then the mastitis kicked in, and then like the flu-like symptoms and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
it was rough going for a little while. But I mean, once I got over that, and then we realized that I was probably never going to sleep in ever again. Once I made peace with that, it went pretty well after that. It wasn't terrible. And I think once we moved into our house and we had our own things again, it was just you were just able to be more comfortable.
Yeah. So when you moved here, either at the hotel or after you got your house, like, are you the type of person who like jumped right in and found community or started to try and build a community right off the bat? Or because I mean now obviously you're very plugged in and familiar with the birth community in particular, and moms and stuff. And so was that like a long process for you, or did you find yourself connecting pretty quickly?
I think it was tricky because going from South Africa to the UK, there's a lot of South Africans in the UK. You can find them everywhere. So your community kind of just self-develops.
Mm-hmm.
And the culture is very different there. So, everybody knows everybody in the pub, and you go down there for a dinner and a chat and an ale, and everybody knows everyone's business, and your community just kind of happened. Moved to the US where everything is just so big.
Mm-hmm.
There's space. Where we lived in the UK, you literally walked everywhere. Grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
pub, I walked to work, everything was close by. So we moved
Yeah.
here. It's like, oh, it's a 10-minute drive, but you drive forever on the
Mm-hmm.
35 to get anywhere. It's only 10 minutes, but you're driving miles because everything is
Mm-hmm.
so far away in Texas.
Yep.
So it took me a while to understand how community worked here and how groups worked. So for a while, I was on my own. And also, you guys drive on the wrong side of the road.
Yes, yes, we do. I'm telling you,
So
we do everything wrong here. Like, I'm not. I can admit that. If Americans don't know what in the world they're doing, it's fine.
it took me a minute to get confidence to drive
Mm-hmm.
solo over here. My husband did all the driving in the beginning. He had been to the US on business before, so he was kind of acclimated with the driving and things like that, which was fine. He had never been to Texas, but he had been down to Florida. So he did a lot of the driving in the beginning, and then I was like, nope, I can't be stuck at home every day. I need to like convert my license. Went and did that, and then slowly but surely integrated myself in like the local library. That's where I started. When he was about 5 months old, we started going to the local library for infant story time or whatever. Didn't really make any friends there, but saw the same moms every week. So at least it was like we could share our miseries and sleep deprivation and feeding issues and things. So it was a nice place to meet and chat about common difficulties in motherhood. Um, I then went to a play date when my son was 6 months old, and she's still my friend today, met her and her daughter there. And we've kind of clicked and we've met her family, and that's kind of where my integration started in the community. I started hanging out with her and her family, and slowly but surely started meeting more people. So that was a beautiful way the stars aligned because the lady who arranged the play date, we're not friends with her. It didn't end up that way. But my
Mm-hmm.
friend and I, we had never met before. We met at the play date, and we've been friends for over 8 years. Well, for 8 years now. So it's a good. I started as soon as I got the license and the ability to move around on my own. I started going to play dates and libraries and things like that, and slowly but surely built a community. And then when I had my second son, that was when I really found community because I had him at a birth center here in Fort Worth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was able to really connect with a lot of people that way. So,
Yeah, I was gonna ask, kind of, I guess, just briefly, because I know like the majority of our talk today is breastfeeding, but I'd love to hear a little bit about what that process looked like for you of finding a provider and deciding how and where you wanted to birth here in the US compared to the UK. Um, yeah, and like just if you want to briefly talk about your birth,
sure.
pregnancy, and birth experience here in the US, that would be great.
So it was a big driving side to what I meant, like, because I'm a postpartum doula as well as lactation counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And the birth of my second son was the reason I was pushed in that direction. And that's because of what I experienced in the UK. So it all kind of interlinks. Um, I had my son, my first son, with midwives in the UK. It was just in a hospital setting. And I
Mm-hmm.
knew that when I moved here and I conceived again, that I did not want to give birth in a hospital. I wanted to have midwives. And obviously, here it is very different. You have like birthing centers and hospitals. And I know you do get nurse midwives and things like that, but it was very much, I decided I wanted midwives.
Mm-hmm.
So I found a birthing center here in Fort Worth was run by midwives. When I got pregnant, went and toured, and yeah, had him there in 2020. Very scary year to have a baby. Everything shut down in March, and he was born in June.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but besides being the pandemic, I think the lack of support, community support. And now, when you have a baby with midwives, they're far more supportive than general providers around like OBGYNs and things like that, right? Because they still will come and do a 2-day follow up after your birth at your home and do all the tests and things like that and check on your breastfeeding. But then that was it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and then you did maybe a 2-week follow up and then you did a 6-week follow up, which is a lot
Mm-hmm.
more than you get from, like I said, OBGYNs and so forth. Um, Right. And that was like, there was a huge gap there for me compared to what I got in the UK. I was like,
Yeah.
where's the person that comes and sits on my couch and drinks tea with me and talks to me about everything?
Yes, for
Like,
real.
where is
Yeah.
that person who,
Where is this person?
and I know it's COVID, so fair, that person can't, but where can we not Zoom? Can we not do a virtual? Can we not? But that person did not exist because it's not a service that is offered here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was one day sitting on the couch, I was nursing my second son, and I said to my husband, I'm going to be a postpartum doula. That's a thing here. And he's like, because doulas are not a huge thing in the UK. They don't have to
Mm-hmm.
be.
They don't have to be. Yes,
Because
exactly. Yes, they don't have to be. I love that. Yes.
you have enough support provided to you without you needing a doula. I'm sure if you
Mm-hmm.
looked for one, you would find one, but it's not
Yes, of
something
course.
that, it's not a needed service.
Yeah, it's very needed here.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I'm gonna be a postpartum doula because I'm gonna help these families like in the transition phase, and I need, I'm gonna be that person because this lady that showed up at my house in the UK, she literally came in, took her shoes off, made us each a cup of tea, sat on my couch, and that was the entirety of what she did for most of her visits. And
Mm-hmm.
she said, "How are you?" And that was it. And
Yes.
she was there for an hour, and I just told her how I was, and I was allowed to cry, and I was allowed to say that I was tired without fear of judgment or the fact that she's going to call CPS on me because I'm a bad mom, all those intrusive
Mm-hmm.
thoughts that come along with it. And then she would go away, and that
Yeah.
would be it. It was just enough support to be like, okay, this is normal. What I'm feeling right now is normal. It's not some checklist that I checked off at the OBGYN's office that says I don't have PPD. But, I stood in the shower and I cried this morning, and she's like, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about it. And I was like, I need to be that person for people. I want to be that person. Especially new moms need to know that they're not alone. Because I think that my very first motherhood journey with my first would have been very different if I didn't have that lady come and sit on my couch every other day for a couple of weeks. And to talk to my husband, and she was very inclusive of him too. It wasn't just about me and baby, it was about him too. Like, hey, how's it going? How are you feeling? How, you know, just generally. He could also share as much as he wanted to, or be like, yeah, I'm fine. And he'd, go upstairs and leave us chat or whatever. Um, so that was the plan. I got my postpartum doula certification after my second son, and I was going to be a postpartum doula. But as life has it, it's hard to be a postpartum doula when you're postpartum yourself
Mm-hmm.
because you have little ones to look after and you're in the thick of the hormones and all of that kind of stuff. So it's hard to show up for families when you're in the same life phase. So I had to take a step back from doing that in person. It just wasn't going to be a practice. I couldn't do overnights. I couldn't look after other people's babies when I had my own babies at home,
Yeah.
and still have my own babies at home. So that then moved to more of like postpartum support, trying to work with moms, just kind of doing support groups, kind of meeting once a month. Hey, this is a safe space for you. But again, once a month is not enough. When you're in the thick of it, you need it far
Yeah.
more regularly than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all that to say, my son's second son's birth was the most beautiful thing. In the middle of the night in 2020, when the world was quiet outside, and yeah, it was wonderful. Compared to the first, it was beautiful.
Well, that's great. I love that. And we'll touch on and compare the third in just a minute. But I want to hear specifically a little bit more about breastfeeding your second, because while every pregnancy and every birth is different, every breastfeeding journey can be different too. So, have you want if you'd be open to sharing just a little bit about how how long you nursed your second, and if there were any like differences in his journey than the first. Did you struggle with anything that you didn't struggle with the first time?
So with him, I nursed him for 2 years and 3 months too. And I quit nursing him when I was 8 weeks pregnant with my third. Um, and he was far, I just told him we're done. He was like, okay. He was fine with it. He's like, that's fine. I don't need this anymore. So he was far easier to wean than my first was.
Yeah.
Um, One thing I did struggle with in his journey is a massive oversupply. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a struggle,
Mm-hmm.
but it
But it
has its
is.
own challenges
Yes.
just as much as an undersupply does, because you just end up, it's just your concern for mastitis increases every time. You're so
Mm-hmm.
engorged and uncomfortable all the time. You're living on a pump.
Mm-hmm.
One good thing that did come from my oversupply is that I was able to help a friend feed her baby. So
Yeah.
I was able to donate, I don't know how many 100 ounces to her to help her feed her baby. So the milk didn't go to waste, and it wouldn't have, but it at least went to a good cause.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you donate it directly to her? Like, was that just a friend to friend thing? Or did you guys go through an organization or go through a midwife or anything?
it was just a friend to friend thing. She had had her baby about 6 months prior to me. I
Okay.
think it's about 6 months. Yeah, and she was just struggling. She had gone back to work and her supply was tanking. And I was like, well, I have a freezer full of milk that you are welcome to. Like, and
That's
it's
amazing.
new baby milk because, and yeah, so my oversupply was insane. I had had a bit of an oversupply in with my first because, and I always thought it was down to me not really knowing what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
So, like trying to figure out how to regulate, I was trying to pump and feed and, all the things that you hear people tell you to do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so with my second, I had a huge oversupply naturally, and then managed to pump enough ounces to help my friend feed her baby, and then slowly but surely, started coming off the pump and trying to regulate. As baby got older, body regulated, and yeah, I had no real issues with him other than that. So that was an interesting, and like I said, people often say, "Oh, you had an oversupply. That's not a problem," and it's not. It's good to know that you have enough milk, but it really can be. It stops you from being able to leave the house,
Yeah. I
like
mean, it comes with
because
its
you
own
have to.
challenges too. Yeah.
So that was the biggest challenge with him. Obviously, having an oversupply means you also have a really strong, hard letdown, which leads
Mm-hmm.
to a lot of reflux, a lot of spitting up. So for the longest time,
Choking. Yeah. Yeah.
for the longest
All
time,
sorts of
he
things.
wasn't allowed to leave the house in clothes that he wanted to. Like, if we went for family photos, I would have to dress him at the
Mm-hmm.
studio or wherever we were doing the photos because otherwise he'd guaranteed have spit up on himself before we get to
Yeah.
where we're going.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
was that was tricky and trying to find a position that worked for us. Obviously grateful for the milk, but the oversupply until I got it regulated was a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Did you, other than pumping, did you need to use any other tools or resources for your oversupply or for positioning um, that helped
I
do
think
with the
also with it
oversupply?
being 2020 and not really being able to do any in-person resources or any in-person kind of hands-on help.
Mm-hmm.
And by that point, I hadn't certified as lactation counselor yet, just as postpartum doula. So I, again, was limited on how much knowledge I had for certain things other than what I saw on YouTube and the bit that my midwife told me. We did a lot of laid back feeding
Mm-hmm.
rather than anything forward facing. So that just helped, gravity helps if you're just laying the other way. We try
Yeah,
to do
that
that
makes
as much
sense.
as possible. We try to feed in, like, we'd feed more often, but in smaller amounts so that at least you'd keep it down rather than spitting it all up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think we just kind of worked through it We also try to side lie feed, and that's where I learned to do that. That was a fantastic tool. Just side lying. I did not get it right with my first. It was just a very awkward position for us.
Mm-hmm.
But my second, he did it super well, and it's one of my favorite breastfeeding positions now because it's just gives everybody enough control and enough space to kind of, he could roll away when he was done, and it wasn't anything like he wasn't choking as much and all of that. So
Mm-hmm.
it took
That's
some trial and
amazing.
error. Yeah.
I love that. So I just quick little squirrel moment because I thought of another question. Since because we talked so much about positions that worked really well with your second, did you and or your first have like a preferred position? Did your first baby have a preference, a favorite breastfeeding position?
I think because I, in my brain, had always just thought like what you see in the movies and kind of what
Mm-hmm.
we were taught is that we just have this kind of cradle hold where you just got your baby here and you're feeding like that.
Mm-hmm.
Between the cradle and the cross cradle coming around like this, those were the
Mm-hmm.
two that we used the most. That's how he latched the most comfortably for him. I did try side lying because it takes a toll. Breastfeeding takes a toll on your body, like your
Mm-hmm.
shoulders, your back. If you're not sitting in the best, most comfortable position and your baby decides to feed for 40 minutes, you're going to start
Yeah.
getting some cramps somewhere. So
Yeah.
I, everything's going to start locking up. So I did
Mm-hmm.
try to laid back and side lying. It didn't work with him. So we mostly did cradle, cross cradle until he was comfortable. I mean, I fed him till he was over 2 years old. So eventually he just sit next to me, which was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yes. Yeah.
But we just did the very traditional kind of lay in the front, and always nursed him in my nursing chair, as you always do with your first. You have to have your nursing chair and your podcast and your water and your like silence to
Mm-hmm.
breastfeed your baby. And
Mm-hmm.
with every subsequent baby you have after that, you learn that, hey, I can push my cart at Sam's and breastfeed at the same time.
Yep. Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah, so we always nursed in the nursing chair with the nursing pillow and all the things, all the equipment, and
Mm-hmm.
that worked for us. So we continued with that.
That is so fun. I love that. Okay, so let's talk about baby number three then. How did your pregnancy and birth compare with baby number three to the first two?
So all three of my babies went over by 2 weeks. So that
Okay.
was very much to be expected, except because she was the third, I thought she would come earlier, and she was a
Mm-hmm.
girl. So
Mm-hmm.
we were waiting patiently. I ended up being pregnant the longest with her.
Nice.
Um, yeah, stubborn little girl.
Those third
Um,
babies, man, they're
oh, they're
third babies are
firecrackers
they are
and
they
un
cause problems from the get-go.
and unpredictable completely.
Yes.
So, um, she was definitely she was born from first contraction to baby was 2 hours and 12 minutes. It was it was very intense very quickly.
Yeah.
We had her at the same birthing center as I had my son, not in the very peaceful manner as I had him.
Mm-hmm.
It was very chaotic, but she was there and she was fine. And I think it was the same birthing center, so we were home just a couple of hours later.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a big, healthy weight. She was 10 pounds.
Wow. Was the birth you said the birth was chaotic. Was that just because it happened so fast or
Yeah.
okay.
There was just no time to prepare for anything. I had gone
Mm-hmm.
in there and I was barely dilated, but the contractions were strong. So everyone was like,
Mm-hmm.
get comfortable, do whatever makes you comfortable. We'll start running the bath in a minute, that kind of thing, because I
Yeah.
do prefer a water birth. And it just went so quickly that we were just everyone was rushing around trying to get because baby decided she was coming and
Yeah.
she was there. There
She
was
took
no
everybody by surprise.
everybody. My husband
Mm-hmm.
was still kind of hanging out on the couch and he was like, "Wait, what was that sound you just made?" I was like,
Yeah.
so it all just happened real quick. Everyone was scurrying to get everything ready, and then she was there. So that's the chaos side of it. Was just
Mm-hmm.
it was just so quick. Everyone was unprepared, and having had waited 12 whole extra days for her to come,
Mm-hmm.
there was an idea in my brain of what her birth would be like. She was my rainbow baby too, so it was going to be
No.
like a whole thing, and it just
Mm-hmm.
wasn't.
That's I'm telling you,
um,
that's how it works. Like that's just how it always works.
Yeah, so she just decided to come. She was ready and then she was there. So we were all taken by surprise. The midwives, us, everybody was just like, "Whew, well, that happened."
Yeah.
Um, And then we got home, and this is the interesting part about breastfeeding. And so prior to having her, I certified as lactation counselor because we were talking about that gap in postpartum doula, like being postpartum support, but also in lactation.
Yeah.
And the US is very big on IBCLCs, and they are an
Mhm.
amazing resource. They really are. But I
Mhm.
always felt like there wasn't a gap filler. It was
Yeah.
like you're going from no one to a specialist.
Mhm.
Where's the middle ground?
Mhm.
And that's why I ended up being a lactation counselor because I feel that a lot of times you can support moms through education and things like that prior to just like really difficult latch issues and that type of thing. That IBCLCs are, like I said, fantastic resource.
Mhm.
There's a bit of a gap there, or that's what I
Yeah,
felt anyway.
I can absolutely see that. As someone who knows a lot of IBCLCs, I feel like oftentimes they are very overworked, I guess you could say. Like they have a lot on their plate, and I wonder if maybe some of that. I know a lot of them are shifting to trying to see clients prenatally, and they're hoping that like that really helps. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would love to see more resources available kind of in between, like you said, because maybe that would lessen the workload for the IBCLCs who are maybe seeing people who could have been supported better by someone else.
Yes, for that kind of like interim specialist in the middle,
Yeah,
which not
yeah.
really. So you kind of got like nothing, and then you got your PCP, and then you have your specialist. That kind of realm of just like somebody who has general knowledge who's able to help with, if you need have specific pump questions. There's nothing really wrong, but you need to help with your pump. You don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily need to see an IBC. CLC for that, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so educated, bring my third baby home, and this is you were saying every pregnancy, every birth is different.
Mm-hmm.
And every breastfeeding journey is the same. And she was by far my hardest baby to breastfeed.
Mm.
Not for any reason in terms of like she didn't have any severe tongue ties or lip ties or anything like that. She had a very mild one, which my first had too, and we nursed just fine. But
Mm-hmm.
her birth was so draining that I didn't realize how exhausted I was, and I didn't realize how exhausted she was. So when it came to latching and things like everything was just too shallow. I wasn't doing all the things I was supposed to be doing. And thinking back, I'm like, how did I miss it?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm educated and I did it for 5 years prior, 4.5 years prior. Like I should know, but I just didn't. And
Mm-hmm.
we struggled for a good couple of weeks to get latch issues sorted. We had a lot of tissue damage that I had to work through and kind of like get back to where we were. So that took me by surprise because I had done it before. I had
Mm-hmm.
figured it out before. But she's a different person and she's a different baby and she was just so exhausted and jaundiced and all the things that just made breastfeeding hard for her.
Yeah. Wow. So did you need to seek any support from an IBCLC through that, or were you guys able to eventually figure it out?
So with the birthing center that I was with, they sent an RN 2 days after baby's born, and I was explaining. She was an IBCLC too, and I had
Okay.
spoken to her just here in my home about certain things like this is what I'm struggling with. So she gave me some like, well, look at because I had already done the education. I was just exhausted. If I
Mm-hmm.
just was thinking clearly, I would have figured it out. So she did help support me a little bit, and she, gave me reminded me of certain things that I can be doing and things like that. But when the tissue damage is already there, that's something you have to heal. That's something you have to
Mm-hmm.
work through. I didn't have nipple shields or anything like that. And in hindsight, that would have been a perfect tool for me. That would have been absolutely great to use. Um, but again, I think once you've done it before, you're just like, well, I'll get through this. It's just
Mm-hmm.
a little hump in the road. We'll get through it. And next month, I've been feeding her for 2.5 years.
Yeah, so she's the longest so far then by about
She's
three
the
months, I guess.
longest.
Yeah.
She's the longest. So we will be weaning next month. That'll mark 7 years of breastfeeding in total for me. And the reason I weaned the boys was because I was pregnant
Mm-hmm.
with the next child. I'm done with babies now, so there hasn't been a real need or rush or any requirement for her to wean. But I think I'm done,
Mm-hmm.
which is something that is very hard to say because it sounds selfish. And a lot of moms, especially sometimes when I work with clients and stuff, they were like, well, I don't want to anymore. And that is
Mm-hmm.
totally okay.
Yeah.
That is totally okay. It's like the breastfeeding journey continues as long as either you or the child want to do it. You
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah.
she may not be, the baby might not be terribly happy about it, but it's something that we've been talking about and working towards, and it's time. It's a better part of a decade of my life, and
Yeah.
we need to move on to the next part, you know?
That's amazing. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess like what instantly comes to mind is that it's kind of a popular like quote, I guess, or like a perspective lately where moms are saying like, okay, I'm I'm no longer in the era of having babies. Now I'm in the era of raising babies. And that's really sweet. I love that. I so do you have any particular, I guess, plans, like any like are you gonna do anything particular to wean her, or are you gonna try to just tell her like no more, like you did with your second, or like do you think she's gonna require a little bit more coaching through the weaning process, or how do you think that's gonna go?
So the one thing I've always done with all the kids is I always day weaned first. So from
Okay.
about 18 months, maybe a little bit after, I would day wean because it's far easier to distract or offer an alternative to breastfeeding in the day than it is at
Mm-hmm.
night
Mm-hmm.
because they're sleepy, they want their milkies. It's very hard to be like, oh, because there's nothing to do, you're sleepy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I always day weaned them successfully, which I felt made night weaning easier
Mm-hmm.
because as they got older with and not drinking during the day, then the length of time between feeds at night gradually on their own got longer and longer and
Mm-hmm.
longer. So my first didn't want to get rid of his like nighttime and first morning feed. That was his difficulty. It's like when I go to bed, I
Mm-hmm.
have milk, and when I wake up, I have milk. And
Mm-hmm.
that was where it was hard. My middle kid was just like, okay, read me a story and I'm good. And he was fine
Mm-hmm.
with it. And we're currently at the I need milkies when I go to bed. It's like her little comfort.
Mm-hmm.
So we're literally feeding once a day now. But it's been a process of like, because I've had time and I have the luxury of being home with the babies, that I can slowly do the weaning process. It hasn't been I'm suddenly cutting you off cold turkey. Um, I also find that once they get to this age, my kids all really enjoy stories.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been reading a lot of books about weaning. I actually wrote her a book about a unicorn that gets her horn when she weans because she loves
You wrote a
unicorns.
book?
I did.
What? Are
Yeah,
you
so
gonna is it published? Are you published?
it is published.
Not me going straight to buy your book after this.
Yeah, it's called Twinkle's Big Change. It's available on Amazon. And it's about a little unicorn. And the reason I started writing books was for my kids, like through the things that they go through. And one of them was she's obsessed with unicorns. So the whole story is about Twinkle, who gets her her horn once she weans off her mom's milk.
Yeah.
Um, so we read that a lot, and she loves that book. So that's been very helpful. And she's always saying she's going to grow a little horn when she's no more mummy's milk. So we've been doing a lot of prep work around talking about it and making sure. I mean, it's going to happen, and I feel like she should be aware that it's going to happen. She may still not be
Mm-hmm.
happy that it's happening, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
something that just kind of like I sprung on her and be like, oh, this comfortable thing that you like to do before bed, we're not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
So we read Twinkle's Big Change. We talk a lot about weaning. She doesn't ask for it during the day or anything like that. It's just literally at bedtime. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're doing. Luxury of time I do have, so
Yeah.
I try and do it as slow as possible.
That's so sweet. I love that. So, um, have you ordered a unicorn horn like headband to give her when she does? Because like you totally have to give her a unicorn horn for sure.
So once we
Yeah.
give up Milky's, she's gonna get a little unicorn. I've got the little horn in the ears, and
Yes.
she'll be like Twinkle, her little
That's
unicorn.
amazing. Wow, that is so cool. Okay, so like one of the next questions I was gonna ask, I feel like may have already been answered, but we'll let you answer it. Because I was gonna ask like through these 7 years of breastfeeding, like what are you the most proud of yourself, in doing throughout that like throughout all those years? Is it, the breastfeeding while moving across country, or writing a book about weaning, or like, or something else? Like those are just two like
I
epically
think,
amazing accomplishments that I recognize already. So, what are you the
thank you.
most proud of yourself for doing or accomplishing through your breastfeeding journeys?
I think that um, breastfeeding is incredibly hard. It is a very, very difficult, and not in a fearful way. It's you have to show up every three
Mhm.
hours to feed another
Mhm.
human being. My babies never took a bottle. Like
Mhm.
I tried, none of them did. So the way they were fed is purely on me. And I think nourishment and being rooted in, like being their safe place, is one of the biggest things I take away from my breastfeeding journey. Is just being the person who they needed, and I showed up for all the feeds. It's, endure comes to mind, but in a good way.
Mhm.
It is something
Yeah.
like I showed up every day, every feed, every letdown, every obstacle. And each one of my babies, like I've fed all three of them over 2 years, and it's been difficult. And again, not in a fearful way, just it's
Mhm.
hard when you have to be someone's everything all the time.
I mean, it's just a huge
So,
commitment. I mean,
hmm
obviously it's the most rewarding, but I mean, I feel like every mother will relate that while it's also the most rewarding thing you'll ever do, it is also the hardest thing you will ever do. And you can't have one without the other. So,
right. And I think just even with every obstacle I faced, I stuck by it, and I tried
mhm.
and I continued, and we worked through it, and damaged tissue, sleepless nights, cluster feeding, growth
Moving across the
spurts,
world.
moving across the world, breastfeeding whilst pregnant,
Yeah.
like all of that was just, it's a huge accomplishment, and sometimes we don't recognize just how many hours and how much time we've put into something. And it's a bit of a thankless job, because the kids will never remember.
Mhm.
They're never going to remember what you did and how many times you got up in the middle of the night, whatever. But it's not about that.
Yeah.
It's about the fact that I showed up for every single feed
Yeah.
and every day, and I
Absolutely.
had to plan my life around it. Like I
Mhm.
can't go out for more than 2 hours at a time without the baby, because I have to feed. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
That's
think that's the
huge.
biggest.
So, I do you have any one particular like memory that stands out of like a nursing session or something that happened while you were nursing? Just like, is there any one particular memory throughout the years that stands out that you'll just never forget?
I think was it 2 years ago? I did for Breastfeeding Week. I did a breastfeeding shoot with my daughter. Um, and there's one particular photo where the photographer captured her beautifully, where she's looking up at me, but kind of like with her milk drunk eyes and a tiny little smile.
Mm-hmm.
But just like of so much, like she was just so safe and loved, and like you could see it in her face. And I have clear memories of each one of my children looking like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just so comfortable, so looked after, so loved, that kind
Yeah.
of, they look at you like you're the whole world, but their
Yeah.
tummies are full, and and I have a picture of, well, in my mind, of each one of my children looking
Mm-hmm.
up at me like that. So that would be it. That those milk drunk eyes when they're so little, so
Yeah.
cute. I
So
know.
precious.
I see it now with my clients, when, and their babies look up at them like that, and I'm like, oh, it's hard, it's so hard, but it's so worth it.
Yeah.
Every drop you can give them, and that's not whether you do it for 2 years or you do it for 2 weeks. Every time you feed your baby, you are doing amazing work. You are an incredible human being. So,
Yeah. And I mean, every ounce counts and
mm.
every ounce is important. I'd love to finish or to wrap up really quick with a couple things. One, um, I would love if you just could share, probably, I guess, maybe your favorite words of wisdom, your favorite encouragement, favorite piece of advice that you would give, maybe to someone who's listening to this right now and is either pregnant and going to be breastfeeding soon, or is in those like really early, times, like, and maybe struggling. Like, just what would you tell another mom?
So if you're pregnant and wanting to breastfeed, educate yourself before the baby comes. Honestly, that is one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give anybody. Find that
Mm-hmm.
breastfeeding class, take the breastfeeding class, or go do a prenatal appointment with an IBCLC or a lactation counselor. Because again, that empowering language will just help you when you're in the thick of everything. I mean, like I said, I'm an educated lactation counselor, but my third breastfeeding journey was hard, and just because I was so tired.
Mm-hmm.
But if I hadn't known anything, then I wouldn't have known what to look out for. So
Mm-hmm.
educate yourself as much as possible prior to baby getting here, because it's just one less thing you need to worry about after you've given birth. And I think if you are struggling, oh, another thing for pregnant moms is manage your expectations. Every baby is different, and you're going to get advice from every side of the family world, your neighbor,
Mm-hmm.
everybody. Oh, well, my sister did. Your baby is not that person's sister's baby.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's baby is different. So you need to manage your expectations. You need to learn alongside your baby. Breastfeeding is the most natural thing in the world. It does not always come very naturally. So babies that can sometimes be born with a bit of tightness in their neck and you cannot understand why they're not latching, that kind of stuff. If you had the education prior to it, you would know, okay, well, maybe we need to go see a lactation counselor and IBCLC. Maybe we need to do body work. You have the language for what you're experiencing and the understanding and the education for it. So that's my biggest piece of advice prior to having a baby. If you're struggling, seek help. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no badge of honor to like struggle through weeks and weeks of pain where it could be
Yeah.
something as simple as a position change, or you need to use a nipple shield, or maybe there's something more severely concerning, like your baby has a tongue tie or a lip tie, or there's something, orally that's not working that no matter how long you feed for is never going to correct itself. So don't sit around forever if you're having problems. Find your local provider. Sometimes your insurance will cover them. You can look that up. I think it's called the Lactation Network.
Mm-hmm.
You can see um, if an IBCLC is covered by your insurance, and just also make that a checklist prior to having your baby. Like have
Mm-hmm.
all those resources available so that
Yeah.
you know that, okay, well, I've hit issues. I know my insurance will cover this IBCLC. Let me get on her books. Because as you mentioned, they're so busy and overwhelmed. Sometimes it
Yeah.
takes a little while to get an appointment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, there's no point in trying to work through the pain, or if you're having pain or if you're struggling, and sometimes you just need somebody to listen. Someone who's been there, someone that's done it, and tell you, hey, this is totally normal. You're
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
know,
I love that.
a lot of times moms are like, he wakes up every 5 minutes or every 45 minutes to feed. What am I doing wrong? You might not be doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
There might just be cluster feeding, growth spurt.
Mm-hmm.
It might, maybe you just need somebody to tell you that you're okay.
Yeah.
So don't hang around for weeks struggling. Just reach out. Somebody's out there to help you.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. That's all such great advice and amazing words of wisdom. Um, I would love to just finish up with quickly like a few ways that anyone listening to this who wants to connect with you can find you. So, Instagram, do you have a website? I know you have at least one book. Do you have more than one book on Amazon that I need to be linking in the show notes? Or,
I have published 17 books in total.
wow, that's
One of
amazing.
them is actually a breastfeeding handbook journal that
Okay.
it's got all the basic information in it, as well as a diaper tracker and a weight track. Anything that you need to know, like as a first time breastfeeding mom, you literally put in your diaper bag. It's like a little handbook that you can take around
Mm-hmm.
with you. So, yeah, I've published 17 books in total.
Wow.
They're all available on Amazon.
Okay.
Um, so that business name is Pitter Patter Publications. We're
Okay.
on Instagram and Facebook. Um, I also do breast milk jewelry because that was something that was, what is the word I'm looking for now? I've lost my words. Um, because of the breastfeeding journey, I wanted something to carry on as a memory forever. So
Yeah.
I got into making jewelry and I started pitter patter jewelry around that. So that's my breast milk jewelry company. But yeah, so that's available. You can find me on Instagram or on Facebook.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And I'll be sure and link all of those things in the notes for the episode too. I'm so blown away. It's been such a pleasure to hear your story and to get to know you so well. And it's just been such an honor, and I can't wait to share with so many others who are listening. Thank you so much for your time and your openness and for being here with me. It's been so great.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been wonderful to talk to you and to share my story. And yeah, and I mean, I would love to chat to other moms if there's anybody that needs any support. Reach
Absolutely.
out. Let's chat.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.